there was no place to hold on to. And I think a lot of us have those moments where life fully falls apart. Usually it's in a part of our lives, but for me, it was everything. Financial, love, relationship, way of living, children. There was nothing that I could grasp to except
every story has a turning point, a moment when everything shifts. Here on Hope Comes to Visit, we hold space for those moments, the messy middles, the sacred breakthroughs, and the quiet strength that carries us forward. I'm Danielle Elliott-Smith. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have a guest with me today who exemplifies hope. Her name is Allison Carmen, and she is a TEDx speaker, a CFO, legal counsel, an author, a podcaster. I could go on and on about her resume, but I'm really excited for you to meet her. Let's take a quick moment to thank the people that support and sponsor the podcast. When life takes an unexpected turn, you deserve someone who will stand beside you. St. Louis attorney Chris Dully offers experienced one-on-one legal defense. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com. That's DULLE lawfirm.com for a free consultation.
Hi, Danielle. Nice to meet you.
Allison, thank you so much for taking time with me. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, and I'm so happy to be with you.
I was taking time. I need to take a minute to read a little bit out of your bio just so that people can get a full understanding of who you are, because I listed off a few things, but there is so much more to you than that, right? So Allison Carmen is a chief financial officer, a chief business operator, and general counsel of the Motherhood Center of New York, an author, a podcaster, a TEDx speaker, a business consultant, a frequent media guest. You have multiple books, right? They include The Gift of Maybe, offering hope and possibility in uncertain times, which I definitely want to talk about because I adored it. A Year Without Men, 12-point guide to inspire and empower, and your most recent audio original, which will be in paperback later this year, A Parent's Guide to Less Stress and Worry. And you, of course, have your podcast. I know that your path to having all of these ands in your title has not been seamless. Part of the reason that you are where you are is because you've had no's and you've had to work your way there. Can you give our audience a little bit of background on you?
Sure. I always say that I was addicted to certainty. If I didn't know what was going to happen next in my life, I projected things were going to be bad or they weren't going to work out. And that's how I spent the beginning of my life. Always stressed, always worried, very sensitive. I had no idea what it meant, and it wasn't something I verbalized, but I was a very, very anxious child. And around the age of 14, I developed the story of how I was going to save myself. And I was going to save myself by marrying this great guy, going to law school, becoming a lawyer, making enough money. And I actually believed that when these things happen, I would be fine. And I think a lot of us do that. We spend our lives believing that the thing that's causing us so much pain is the thing that's not happening in our lives. And you know, we can't even fault ourselves for it because we're told that, right? We're told that if something in the outside in the world happens, then you will have safety and security. So for me, I still was very anxious. I see maybe you want to say something.
No, I won't interrupt because I'm so enjoying what you're saying, and please continue, and then I'll jump in.
Okay, so I held this story, and although I was still stressed and worried, I would say, "Oh, okay, you didn't do well in that test, but that you're going to get to law school, and you're going to meet the guy, and then everything is going to be okay." So the tool was the story. So I had the anxiety, and it was the story of what will be that calmed me down. So sure enough, you know, again, very anxious, very worried, but I get myself through college, get myself through law school, married the guy who I thought was great at the time. And I remember walking to work my first day thinking, I've arrived. I walk into the law firm really feeling like I have certainty now. I have the life that I dreamed of. And sure enough, the second day of work, they come in, the partners come in and they let us know they're firing half the first years. And I was a first year. And I didn't get fired, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter because
they provided the uncertainty.
I realized that I was never going to win this game. I was never going to win the certainty game. No matter what I did, life would have uncertainty in it, but I had no tools. So I totally fell apart. I stopped sleeping. The anxiety got worse. I started to have immune system problems. And I just went on a search. I started to meditate. I became vegan. I sat on magnets. Whatever there was.
You tried everything.
I did it. But what would happen is it would calm me down. But the minute something uncertain would happen, I would fall apart again.
Spiral again.
Because I always believed that the future, if I didn't know what was going to happen, it was negative or bad. So that's when the over worry really starts to happen. And then one day I was taking Qigong as another one of the things I was trying to do. My Qigong teacher heard all my stress and worry, and he shared the story, the Taoist story about the farmer. And maybe some of your listeners have heard it, but I'll share it because for me, it was so life-changing. He said, Allison, he's like, I'm going to share this with you because I want you to know that life has maybe. And he said there was a farmer and he had a horse and his horse ran away. And his neighbor came by and said, you have the worst luck. And the farmer said, maybe. But the next day, the mayor came back with 5 horses. And the neighbor comes by to the farmer and says, you have the best luck. And the farmer says, maybe. But the next day, the farmer's son is on the horse. He falls off and breaks his leg. And the neighbor comes by to the farmer and says, you have the worst luck. And the farmer says, maybe. But the next day, the army comes to take the farmer's son to war, and they can't take him because his leg is broken. And the neighbor comes by and says, you have the best luck. And the farmer says, maybe. And in the Taoist tradition, the story means things are neither good or bad. But for me, that's not how I felt. I actually felt a pop in my chest because I never in my life thought that the horse could run away and come back with 5 mares. And it sounds so simple, but that night I went home and anytime I had a worry, Allison, you don't have enough clients. Allison, your child's not going to be okay. Whatever it is, I would say, well, maybe that thought's not true. And the minute I said that, all of a sudden it's not that the fear totally goes away. You offer yourself possibility in uncertainty. So, and at first it was just for stress. Then all of a sudden my mind was calmer. Then all of a sudden I started to view uncertainty as my best friend. And then when you start to do that, fear and worry shift, you actually develop a type of faith. And now my entire life shifted. And that's really how it began for me that's, a lot has happened since, every time you think you have a hold of it, life gives you something else.
I find that the universe, anytime I tell the universe that I'm going to set a boundary, that I'm feeling good, the universe will say, are you sure? And will present for me. If I say I'm going to set stronger boundaries and I'm not going to lend money, a stranger will pop up and say, hey, Danielle, I'm struggling, and will present me with this really intense, horrible situation, and my heartstrings and everything in me who loves to give will have to say, this is a boundary you set, Danielle. Are you sure? Are you sure this is what you're going to stick to? But I want to go back to something that you said at the beginning, because I think that you use the word addiction, right? And I think frequently we think about addictions as really, really things that are bad, that are harmful, that are things that we put in a very specific bucket, whether they are drugs or alcohol or shopping or overeating. And when you said uncertainty as an addiction, you recognize that mental spiraling, that what you were doing to yourself, that level of harm you were causing. I'm curious about how you eventually recognized that you could put that in an addiction bucket, that you could put that in the place where that was causing you harm, and how you first sought out the help you needed to make that change.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting you said that, because it was actually someone in my life that was very spiritual. And they turned to me and said, you're addicted to certainty. And I remember that moment. It was after I'd found maybe. So it was interesting. I didn't have the realization until I started playing with the idea of maybe. Because as my mind it was the realization. It was like every time I got relief from knowing that the unknown is my best friend, that there's an infinite field, that would kind of bring me to this other place. But because I was bouncing back and forth before, when I was in it, no one said a word to me. But the bouncing back and forth made me see I had the problem. Because without maybe, I was always stressed, always worried, and the future could never give me anything good if I didn't like what was happening in the moment. So it's interesting that the healing really started after the maybe came into my life. Then there was the recognition. Before, I thought if I would just eat more broccoli, right, then I would solve it because it was an outer game. And again, a lot of us don't realize that, but we're just waiting for that thing to happen, believing that certainty will be ours. And I think that at the end of the day, everything comes down to our relationship with uncertainty. The person we marry, the job we're willing to take, the place you walk to on the way to work, whatever it is, we're always balancing that out if we don't have a good relationship with the unknown.
And when you talk about making uncertainty your best friend, there were so many phrases that were running through my head as I was listening to The Gift of Maybe, because I thought scarcity, right? When you said, am I going to have enough clients? I remember my ex-husband at one point saying, how in the world do you function day to day? Because you don't know what's coming next. You don't know if you're going to have clients for next month. And I said, if I lived in a place of scarcity, I would never get anything done. I would constantly be checking my email. Is someone else interested in working with me? What I would take anything that came my way just because I was afraid nothing would ever come my way. But then I also thought about the notion of catastrophizing, right? Because especially as a mother, I feel as though I've had moments where I am a professional catastrophizer, right? What if my child isn't okay? What if? And I find that it can be very easy to spiral. Someone doesn't call you back. You're wondering where someone is. And all of a sudden they are in a car accident. They are not okay. What tools do you give your coaching clients to help them avoid scarcity, avoid catastrophizing? And are there different ones for different levels of spiraling that way?
Yeah. The one thing I have to say, what's so interesting about life is your ex-husband had just as much uncertainty as you did.
Oh,
that's the
probably more.
So that's the game we play. Like, we don't realize how much has to come together every day for us to wake up in the morning and just go on with our day, right? So we're always thinking there's more certainty than there is. And that might frighten some people, but if we start to realize that everything that happens in our life happens in the unknown, we start to kind of be friends with it better. So it's really interesting that certain people look at someone else's life as more uncertain than theirs, and we're all in the same realm. And you remind me of a story that I actually told in the last book I wrote, Maybe Everything's Okay, because for me, parenting was the most difficult thing. Because, you get to a point in your life, I'm like, okay, I could lose my job and I can lose my money, but my child needs to be okay. And there's no compromise on that. And anytime you need something to be a certain way, you will suffer. So I had this realization. I said, okay, in this lifetime, I can, kind of elevate and enlighten myself in so many ways, but I am not letting go of that thought that my child needs to be okay. So when I started to really contemplate it, I realized that, okay, there might be some level of suffering, but part of it is my relationship with uncertainty. Like you just said, the catastrophizing, that things are bad. So I realized that as a parent, the more you could become friends with the unknown, the less you will suffer. Because part of it is, I need my child to be okay. And another part of it is your relationship with uncertainty. So one night, I'll tell you a little story. One night, my daughter started to have stomach problems, and it went on for a couple of months. She was young at the time, and I took her to the doctor thinking maybe she was allergic to dairy. Maybe, it was an infection. And when I was at the doctor's office, he said to me, maybe your daughter has celiac disease. And for some reason, that was not okay in my mind. So he took a bunch of blood work and I went home and I was catastrophizing. I was, again, the minute we resist the moment, we're going to suffer. It was not okay. And my mind started to get crazy. And I had already known about maybe, but it didn't matter because I didn't want it. So that night I sat down, and this is how one of my favorite exercises developed. Of course, my ex-husband, he was fast asleep, and maybe his mindset was actually better. And I asked myself, what is your biggest fear? And my biggest fear was that my daughter had celiac disease and she would not be okay. And then I asked myself, are you absolutely certain that fear is true? And that's when you gotta love life, because nothing is certain. Nothing. So I couldn't say, absolutely she had it. Absolutely she wouldn't be okay. So when I said, no, I'm not absolutely sure, then I said, well, what are your maybe statements? And that's what happened to me that night. Maybe everything would be okay. Maybe she didn't have celiac disease. Maybe she had celiac disease and it would be fine. Maybe you'll figure it out. And all of a sudden, I brought in possibility in my biggest fear. So although I was still afraid she had it, I realized that that was not game over. We go to the maybe not. We go to doom and gloom, and we forget that life is filled with possibility. So that night, the exercise of maybe was actually born, and I was able to hold it. And of course, the doctor didn't get the blood work back for 10 days, but I was able to hold it every time. She's not okay. Everything's bad. Well, maybe that's not true. Maybe it'll be okay. Maybe you'll figure it out. Maybe a lot of people live with this disease. And after 10 days, she didn't have it. She happened to just be allergic to dairy. But because for those 10 days, I held my fear in the infinite field. I held my fear knowing there were other possibilities. That was life-changing for me. And then I parented with maybe. So it's not that we will not suffer, but when you give yourself a little hope, everything changes. And then you actually look for more things. You're more courageous. Because if you think about it, if you're not afraid of uncertainty, you're going to try new things. You're going to live with less fear. You're going to be more present. So, and that's how I parented. And parenting is not easy. I mean, I dealt, it's not. Yeah. Because it's always going to throw you. And you can't, it's like you love something more than yourself, but you have no control. Like in the spiritual community, we always say you can control yourself. Right. But what if you love something more than you and you can't control it? So, but again, if we could have a better relationship with the unknown, we will parent better. We will make better decisions, and will allow our child also to express themselves and find their own path. Again, a lot of parents are, you can't do that. That's not going to work out. And it's not because they want to control their child. They want to know everything's okay. I think people are very hard on parents. They're very judgmental when they see parents signing their kids up for every activity. I really think that the essence of it is, I am afraid my child won't be okay. So if I do this, they'll be okay. I do that, they'll be okay. But when you kind of master your relationship with uncertainty, you sit back a little bit and you say, oh, maybe there are many ways to be okay. And this moment can change. So that
I want people to think about that for a second, because we constantly talk about parents judging other parents, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the genesis, the origin of judging other parents is our internal fear that maybe my child is not going to be okay. I'm judging you because maybe I'm doing it wrong. And if only I was doing it that way, maybe my child is going to be okay. And maybe I'm doing it right. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. And my thought on parenting was always, I can only control what's happening in my house. And the only people who get to make a decision about what's happening in my house are the people who live under my roof. And so I always tried very hard to reserve any judgment that I had about anyone else and anything that they had going on. I want to ask you a question that I will inevitably ask anyone that I bring on. What is your definition of hope?
it's interesting because in the Buddhist tradition, right, all attachment leads to suffering. So someone might say that hope is an attachment. Hope is us saying things need to change for me to be okay. But for me, I cannot get out of bed in the morning without hope. I think every business, every marriage, everything we do in life has hope in it. And where we get ourselves into trouble is that we overdefine what hope is. What we do is we take hope and we narrow it and we say, I hope that I will get this particular job. I hope this, I hope that. The beauty of hope is that if you can hold it in an expansive way, if you can hold it knowing that you don't know what's going to happen, you don't need to know what's going to happen, but you have hope. You have hope for humanity, hope for your life, hope for your children. But you hold it so broadly. For me, it's the most inspiring thing there is. And I say, maybe is hope without attachment. That's how I look at it. So maybe always brings me back to hope, but not rigid. So for me, without maybe, I'm in doom and gloom. And with maybe, I always know that there's an infinite field. There are more possibilities. And that's how I live. And anytime I narrow it, that I need this job, I need this podcast to be okay, I need you to like me, I'm doomed. But if I could get on this podcast and say, I hope we have a wonderful conversation, and I hope this and I hope that, and then but I allow it. And I know that even if it goes wrong, there's still another opportunity in the next breath. So to me, hope is everything. But we have to constantly almost massage it and know that we're being expansive with it, because it can become the most toxic thing in our life as well. So,
well, I love that the way you've explained it is it gives it room to grow and to change. So maybe hope can be many things to many different people depending on what they need at any given time. Yeah. Has there ever been a time that you think that you didn't have hope or that you couldn't recognize it in your life?
Oh, absolutely. And what's so interesting is you'd think I would tell a story from my 20s or my 30s, but it's coming on 7 years. 7 years ago, I was actually eating at the counter I'm sitting at right now. Mm-hmm. And my husband at the time came home and said that he was leaving me. And 5 minutes before, I thought I had a wonderful marriage. I had just dropped my kids off to the camp. And I thought that nothing in my life was everything. I was flowing, but I had certainty that marriage was my certainty. Okay. I didn't realize it at the time. And when he told me that, I thought he was joking. And then when he repeated it and the story goes on, I fell to the floor and I could understand how my life would go on. This was my everything. This was my life. This was my family. And later on you think, how am I going to take care of myself? How am I this? How am I that? But that moment, I felt hopeless. I felt despair. I felt like I couldn't catch my next breath. And this went on for about 3 days. And I think it was on the third night, I keep the gift of maybe by my bed.
Good for you.
And for me, like, life without maybe is suffocating. And I go into the bathroom hysterically crying again, cannot really catch myself. And I start reading my own book. And on page 6, I listed all my biggest fears. And one of my biggest fears was, would my husband always love me? I don't even remember writing that.
Wow.
I don't know if an editor put it in. Maybe I put it in. And in that moment, even with all my heartache, because it was in the gift of maybe, I thought to myself, I have maybe. And in that moment, a tiny bit of hope came in, and I did that exercise on the book. And at the time, I thought he would stay, but I was like, maybe we'll work it out. Maybe he'll stay. And then I said, maybe I will be okay if he leaves. Maybe there are many ways to be okay. And I felt a tiny pop. It was a slither of hope, but it was enough for me to constantly remember that I had maybe no matter what, I was heartbroken. So it's not like you're not going to feel, you have to feel your feelings. It's not that you're not going to go through challenging times, but because I knew I had maybe, it was almost every day there was like, I knew that there was another possibility, even though I couldn't see it. And that my 3 days without hope, and then a long time with just enough. And I think if you remember that there's always the infinite field and the unknown could bring good things too, we live differently.
Look at you following your own advice.
Yeah.
How powerful did that feel in retrospect, right? I know one of the topics that you discuss in detail and in a really beautiful way is regret and how powerful it is not to live in regret. But just the recognition that, because a lot of times we're really good at talking the talk, but not always doing as we say, right? I learned as a parent how important it was that, because my kids are going to do as I do, not do as I say, right? So it's important that I'm doing what I'm talking about. And there it was for you to follow your own path, a path that's proven. How powerful was it for you to recognize that you could do the work?
Yeah, it was actually life-changing, but also it changed my relationship with maybe. Because at first, for a long time, it was a practice of, remember your maybe statements. And it was kind of like a practice to release, a practice to remind, a practice to allow. That moment made it a life perspective because so many things had fallen apart that my life perspective became maybe. I didn't know how I was going to afford my home. I didn't know how I was going to live without him. I didn't know how my kids were going to be okay. There was not a piece of my life where I could grasp for uncertainty. So maybe at sometimes life would feel solid and this would be uncertain and I would grab for the maybe. But there was nothing. There was nothing to hold on to but the infinite, but the maybe. So it was life-changing because right now, my mind works in maybe. The perspective is maybe. It's no longer the statement, do I need maybe statements? Of course. I mean, they're always with me. I have maybe cards. I always think about it, but I live more in the maybe. So for me, it was an elevated maybe. And it was unexpected because again, there was no place to hold on to. And I think a lot of us have those moments where life fully falls apart. Usually it's in a part of our lives, but for me, it was everything. Financial, love, relationship, way of living, children. There was nothing that I could grasp to except the idea that uncertainty is my best friend. So that's how it changed. It altered everything in my life.
Well, this is a really good segue to something else that I wrote down because there was a quote that you had, and I was going back and forth between the audiobook and writing down a quote because there was something that I found really powerful in something that you said. Maybe does not minimize hardship, nor does it ask us to pretend that life does not have its challenges. Instead, maybe is a life philosophy that asks us to embrace all that is possible from where we currently stand. It offers us hope that whatever we're facing in life, there may be a path for us to move forward and find another way for us to create new opportunities with less emotional pain and find peace in the moment. What I love about that is you're not saying things are not going to be hard. You're not saying you're not going to face challenges, and it isn't, oh, shucks, find the silver lining, right? It's not everything happens for a reason, because admittedly, I've always struggled with the, oh, everything happens for a reason. Yeah. To me, the notion is not that I'm supposed to find the good in what happens, but I am supposed to find my way through. I'm not responsible for what happens, but I'm responsible for how I respond to it. And that to me seems to be so much in the beauty of the maybes that you're offering people. And sitting in that place, I get to be responsible for how much I suffer when things happen, because I'm choosing to look at maybe this is going to take me in a different direction. I know that I'm grateful that I live in a place where I don't constantly say, I wish this had happened. I wish I'd gone left instead of right. I wish that I'd gotten into this school instead of this, because had anything in my life been different, you and I would not be sitting here having this conversation right now. And I love not only this conversation, but this version of me and my life right now. I love my children. I love the man I'm in love with. I love my friends and I love where I am. And had any left been a right or anything been different, any time that I was wishing something else had happened along the way, I wouldn't be where I am now.
That's beautiful. That's just gorgeous. But not everyone could get there, right? So, and I'm not saying not everyone could get there, but not everybody is in that same place. Sometimes I'm on a podcast. I so appreciate what you just said, because sometimes I'll be interviewed and they'll say, I believe the best is always happening. And I say to somebody, I'm not comfortable telling that to another person. What I say is either the best is happening or I have to make the best of it, right? Because then in a way, you respect it. Like, you're at a beautiful place that you're not in a regret. You're realizing that everything that's ever happened to you in this lifetime has brought you to this moment with the hope and possibility that maybe your life could be different from this day forward. Or I'm so happy and joyful that I have the life that I have. And so, but a lot of people, what they do is they look at the past and they believe that another choice would have saved them. And what's so interesting about the story of regret is it's a perfect story. You haven't lived it. Every choice has twists and turns, right? For all you know, you could have been at the wrong block at the wrong time. You know how many times people said, I should have gone into business with that person. I should have married that person, but you never played it out. That's what's so amazing. It's actually one of the most competitive thoughts you could possibly have, is the pristine story of regret, because that choice would have led you to the promised land. And
yes, so see, this is what one of the things I wanted you to talk about. So your book actually helped me in preparing for launching this podcast, right? And I didn't know I would need it, right? I didn't know what I didn't know until it was right there in front of me. I just got chills. And it's just the kismet of the way things have continued to fall into place. And I am beyond grateful, right? I'm grateful for this conversation. I'm grateful for a mutual friend that connected us. I'm grateful for so many things. But I was stressed, anxious. I always told my son, who is pursuing a career in broadcasting, that if you stop getting butterflies before you do things like this, then you're in the wrong field, because you've stopped caring, right? So I am in a place with butterflies, and I'm doing everything I can to deal with my anxiety. And I was sitting in the bath last night. I haven't taken a bath in a very long time. And I'm listening to your book. And I sat straight up in the bath last night as you were talking about the story of regret. So I would love for you to elaborate on how you talk people through. If I was to come to you and say, I should have, what do you say to me to help me see what should is doing to me?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is that we would talk about regret, right? We would talk about the idea that regret is a reverse maybe, and they didn't live out those other things. And then, there's also this, it's different. If you would have come to me before my husband left, I would have just talked about regret as a reverse maybe. And then the maybe today, and, all we can know is here we are with the hope and possibility that maybe we could have the life that we want. But there's an element of acceptance and non-resistance that we have to implement into our lives. So I wouldn't just talk about, you don't know, maybe it wouldn't have been better. For me, that's maybe it wouldn't have been better. And people would be like, you're right, maybe it wouldn't have been. And what's possible now? But when my husband left me, even though I found the maybe, I was spiraling because could I have said something else? Should I have done something else? How could it have been different? It was so overwhelming. And I remember I was getting into the shower and I remembered this quote, believe it or not, by Lady Macbeth: "What's done could not be undone." And there was something about that. It's almost like the moment, anything behind the moment is behind a solid wall. And for some reason, we think we can get behind it. We think our thoughts can get behind the solid wall, change the past, know what should have been. And there's something about acceptance and non-resistance that is necessary in this lifetime to move forward. Because even though I had the maybe, I was spiraling because I kept thinking I could have done something different. And in a way, what is. You know what I'm saying? And if I resist the moment, I'm resisting the universe. If I resist the moment, I'm resisting the meaning of my life. If I resist the moment, I'm resisting all that I am and all that can be. And it's not an easy moment for us, right? Because we're being asked to accept life as it is. But on the other hand, there's no other place to go. So for me, maybe isn't important. Regret is a reverse maybe. But coming to the moment, knowing that if I resist what is, I am resisting all, and accepting. So there is an element that we must accept life as it is in order to move forward. And that's something that was another beginning for me. So first the maybe came in, but then I didn't like it. I didn't prefer it, but this was what was happening. That's where you stand. And then, practices like gratitude, like what do I have? What are my resources? And also for me, having my daughters made it hard to regret, right? So sometimes we don't always have that. So for me, although there was a lot I could say, I knew that this path is the only way I would have had them. And we don't also have that as well, right? So sometimes we actually just have to accept life the way it is and know that we have maybe, and know that what we seek is seeking us. That if we have a dream, it's because it's out there somewhere in the universe. So it depends on what you're trying to get over, what you're experiencing. But before my husband left, I would have just said, you're in a reverse maybe. And now I realize that there's a lot more depth there. Without acceptance, moving forward is extremely challenging.
Allison, you are brilliant and kind and hope-filled, and it has been delightful to chat with you. I have one final question. Is there any final words of wisdom, hope-filled or otherwise, that you'd like to leave everyone with?
Yeah. Don't let anybody tell you what is possible and what is not in your lifetime. Truly, nobody knows. And again, what you seek is seeking you. Your dreams are real. And life really does have maybe. Because you don't know, that means all is possible. So in that moment where you feel lost, where you feel you can't find your way, when you feel like the next moment is unbearable, know that the next moment is the infinite field and all things are possible and you have maybe. And it sounds like such a little shift, but it's everything. Because the minute you realize you're not doomed, you open up to all that's possible in your life. So that, I think, would be my message.
You are amazing. Thank you so much for being with me. As a reminder, people can find you on your website, AllisonCarmen.com. Your latest audiobook right now is the gift of maybe. No, maybe it's going to be okay. Maybe everything's okay.
Stress and worry.
And that will be out in the fall as a paperback book. Yes?
Right. And right now it's available on audio.
Where else can people find you?
I have my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. I write sometimes for salon.com, but that's more about healthcare and stuff like that. And again, my books, The Gift of Maybe, A Year Without Men, my website, and, just kind of bopping around New York City. So
just perfect. Thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
You're wonderful. Thank you so much for being here with us. I so hope this visit with hope has brought you a little bit of light, a little bit of comfort, and a little courage for your day. If you have heard something today that resonated with you, I so hope you will share this episode so that someone you know might find a little visit with hope as well. And in the meantime, take care of yourself, and we are so looking forward to seeing you back here again soon. I'm incredibly grateful to the people who support and sponsor the podcast. Sometimes life takes a sharp turn, and when it does, having someone steady in your corner can make all the difference. Chris Dulley is a trusted St. Louis attorney who personally guides his clients through criminal defense cases with clarity, compassion, and experience. From traffic violations to serious charges, he shows up fully and directly. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com for a free consultation.